we've got to fight the woke in the businesses. We've got to fight the woke in the universities. We've got to fight the woke in the bureaucracy. And we will never, ever surrender to the woke mob here in Florida. This is where woke goes to die.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was Governor Ron DeSantis with a somewhat familiar refrain taking on what he describes as wokeness. And he's not the only candidate taking that message to 2024 Republican primary and caucus voters. Republican presidential candidate and author of Woke Inc., Vivek Ramaswamy, joins us now. Vivek, great to see you.
Good to see you.
So, Ron DeSantis considers himself more anti-woke than any other Republican in this race. Is he?
Look, I think that I wrote the book on this, and I've worked with Governor DeSantis to educate him on this issue over the years. I'm glad to see how he's implemented that agenda, in part, although imperfectly, in the state of Florida. I think the deeper question is, wokeness is a symptom of what? It is a symptom of a national identity crisis in this country, where we hunger for the answer to what it means to be an American. There's a black hole of identity amongst young Americans where we're hungry for a cause, for purpose, for meaning. And so I go beyond just being anti-woke. My question is, how do we fill that moral hunger in our country with a vision of what it actually means to be American? That is how we lead the country out of a national identity crisis. Not just running from something, but running to something. And I think that's the difference between me and Governor DeSantis.
So, Vivek, as you know, later on, Ron DeSantis will formally announce his presidential campaign on Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk and David Sachs. Is the governor trying to steal your tech bro thunder?
You know, I never call myself a tech bro anyway. And so I'm somebody who's created things. I've built companies. I've developed and overseen the development of medicines, 5 of which are FDA approved today. Very different. Governor Ron DeSantis has had his entire career in politics, and that's fine. But I think that the Republican Party, I think the country is hungry for an outsider. Somebody who's actually accomplished things outside of politics, who's created things in the world, seen the problems firsthand and actually solved them. That's what I'm aiming to do in this race. But I think that Ron DeSantis' entry is welcome from my standpoint. More competition breeds strength. We need to be having a rich debate about what do we stand for? Why do we stand for it? And as long as we make it about that, rather than some boring biographical brawl between Trump and DeSantis, each attacking each other and boasting about their own accomplishments, I don't think that does much for the country. But if we're debating what we stand for and why, which is what I'm bringing to this race, I think it's going to make our country better. And I think that's the kind of leader we need in the White House.
Vivek, you and I had a long conversation on my show, The Takeout, and in that conversation, I let you deal with some stories that had cropped up then. A story that's cropped up this week, Martin Shkreli, convicted of securities fraud, says you were one of his biggest investors and he calls you a friend. Are those two things true?
No, they're not true. But one of the things that is true is that when I was actually at a hedge fund, the part that was true is that as part of a portfolio investments, hundreds and actually thousands of companies that we evaluated, one of the companies, the public companies that he started, was in the portfolio. One of the things I wrote about him actually in Woke Inc., though, because the sad part is much of what Big Pharma does is really just a disguised version of what he did at a different company that he started, the one that made him famous, was jacking prices. Turns out Big Pharma does that regularly in our country, but they disguise it under the veneer of stakeholder capitalism, under the veneer of social responsibility. And the irony is they're actually directing accountability away from some of the very same kinds of behaviors that are different, maybe in degree, but not in kind. And so one of the things I've done in Woke Inc. is to really call out the ways in which much of big business, even Big Pharma, is really guilty of the very things they try to distance themselves from by blowing woke smoke to deflect accountability for their actual behaviors. And so I've been unafraid in calling that out, and I've seen it from the other side. It's part of what gives me a voice here is I'm not just some sort of author who's written books. I've done that, but I'm doing it based on experiences that I've had in the real world, including in the world of elite business in this country. And I'm unsparing in revealing what that's actually all about.
Vivek, you have a PAC called American Exceptionalism. What is the role formally or informally in that PAC of Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager to Donald Trump?
I have nothing to do with the PAC. So I couldn't tell you who's doing what for the PAC. I did read something about it in the news recently. Of course, PACs are entirely separate from the campaign. I'm focused on the campaign. And my view is one of the things that's unique about how I did start this campaign is the normal procedure for getting into a political campaign as a politician is You ring a tin can and ask a bunch of donors for permission to run, hat in hand. I didn't follow that model. I can't bring myself to do that anyway. My family and I, we put a $10 million plus 8-figure check into the campaign to start this, then got a bunch of small dollar donors. We're approaching 40,000 unique individual donors who have made donations to this campaign. That's the grassroots approach that's going to lift this up, hopefully all the way across the finish line next year. I don't refuse to be somebody else's puppet, so that's the way we're running things over here.
So when you read about Corey, one of the questions that raised was, is your campaign a stalking horse for the former president to take down DeSantis? Is it?
That would be a bizarre thing to do. I'm running against Donald Trump. I'm running against Ron DeSantis. But more importantly, I'm running for this country and reviving what it means to be American. I've drawn contrasts from both of them. Talked to you earlier about some of my contrasts from DeSantis. With respect to Trump, my goal is to take the America First agenda even further than Donald Trump took it. And I think we can do that if we're doing it based on first principles and moral authority, not just vengeance and grievance. America First doesn't belong to Trump. It doesn't belong to DeSantis. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people of this country. I'm the first millennial ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican, and I'm doing it because I think I am best positioned to pass on that American identity to the next generation of Americans. That is why I'm in this race to do what Reagan did in 1980. I'm in this race to deliver that in 2024, revive a missing national identity, and I think we can do it.
On the trail in Columbus, Ohio, Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks for joining us. Safe travels.
Thank you. Appreciate it.